Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Hearing. In January 2020, at the music industry trade show called NAMM, I did a panel discussion with Dr. Michael Santucci, founder of Sensaphonics, on hearing protection for musicians. It was an honor to participate with him, as he is truly one of the most influential and impactful people in music audiology. My time at NAMM was made even more interesting when I saw the newly introduced ASI plus Sensaphonics 3D ME active ambient in-ear monitor system at the Sensaphonics booth. That first version was an innovative blend of in-ear monitors and modern hearable technology to both prevent noise-induced hearing loss when performing and improve music quality for music professionals who already suffered from hearing loss. I was so enamored with 3D ME that I actually recorded a video interview with Michael on the spot. I think that was the first video I ever did out in the field. Over the course of the next 3+ years, the 3D ME system had only gotten better. It's got improved performance, several new and useful features. And as a person who loves his music, was part of the in-ear monitor industry for 10 years, and has hearing loss myself, I love what ASI Audio and Sensaphonics is accomplishing. Therefore, it's a pleasure to congratulate them on being awarded Innovator of the Year. That's the top honor in the Hearing Health and Technology Matters Hearing Technology Innovator Awards competition. With me to celebrate and to share more about the 3D ME system are Michael Santucci and Evan Mackenzie. Michael, please tell everyone a little bit about your background and what Sensaphonics is all about.
Okay, Andrew, thanks. Sensaphonics I founded in, believe it or not, 1985, because I came from a family of musicians, and musicians were complaining about tinnitus and other music-induced hearing disorders, and foam earplugs weren't cutting it. So I tried to make my own earplugs, was a beta tester for Mead Killian and the ER series earplugs back in 1989, and started writing about them. In 92, I created my first in-ear monitor that was used by the Grateful Dead, and that kind of put the company Sensaphonics, and we're just a tiny little 10-person company, put us on the map with big companies out there, and we've been going ever since. So it's been over 25 years of making products that are all designed to not only enhance performance, but also to protect hearing while you're doing it.
Thanks, Michael. And what about you, Evan?
My background is in, thank you for this. My background is in branding and marketing as a photographer, and then wound up in ad agencies for about 10 years. And photography, like branding and marketing, is storytelling. And I've always had an entrepreneurial bent to my psyche, if you will. And I wound up getting out of that glamorous and rather neurotic world of the ad agencies, and wound up at QSC Audio for 8 years and built an agency there, and then went to work for a few other brands after that, and then wound up in Nashville working for Gibson and then DPA microphones. And then when there was transitions there at those companies, I had the opportunity to come back to Ohio, which is where I'm originally from, and help Michael launch ASI Audio, which at the time didn't even have a name. So it was a lot of planting the seeds in the garden and then growing the crops. And 4 years later, here we are, thriving. And it's very rewarding because this, and I know this is going to sound like marketing speak, forgive me, it's the only iPhone in the world that does what it does. That is completely controllable and gives you, the musician, the engineer, the freedom to hear your music your way, not anybody else's. And I really vibe with that a lot. Pat Quilter of QSC has the same thinking. That's why his products are so fine. So here I am.
Oh, very good. Yeah, I imagine your Gibson background had some influence over that as well. And I can't resist mentioning that when you were at DPA Microphones and I was at Knowles, we share the fact that ours are the two microphones on the Perseverance rover on Mars at this very moment.
Exactly. And I don't know if you know this, but there's two of them in every Formula One race car. So when you watch a Formula One race, use some nice speakers because you'll really hear it.
Nice. Well, you had given the basic premise of the 3DME system, but I think, Michael, I think a great place to start would be with some background on the experience of being a musician and a music professional. What do they need to hear when performing, and what are the challenges in giving them what they need to hear while they're performing?
Well, in-ear monitors in general were invented to try and give musicians more control over their acoustic environment on stage. Before, they had a floor speaker that everybody's hearing, and it's in the way of what you're trying to play if it's not your floor speaker. So they were always turning up the floor speakers, floor monitors, louder than the person next to them so they could hear what they're playing. In-ear monitors were designed to solve that problem. One of the problems with in-ear monitors is that people turn them up to where they normally play if they aren't told differently, and that's something that's been documented a number of times on studies. The other problem is people also tend to take one out, because when you put these in-ear monitors in your ears, it actually creates an environment in your head that you're not used to. They're used to localization and spatial cues when they play. So the drummer's behind them, the crowd's out in front of them, they turn around and everything moves. Now it's all placed in the center of their head like a stereo, headphones. And wherever they go, it doesn't seem natural. So you see this a lot of one coming out of the ear. And I'm sure most of the audiologists listening to this will know that binaural summation is lost when you do that. So they're actually turning the other ear up 6 dB louder. And if there's enough noise in the open ear, it's going to mask the ear monitor ear. And in other words, taking one out is really bad for hearing. And why were they doing it? To get those spatial cues. So the 3DME's main purpose was to allow them to hear the room in both ears without taking the earphones out, the protection of that, and still be able to hear exactly what they want. When I joined forces with Thinkamove, who's the company I'm partnered with to form ASI Audio, they brought in the Bluetooth and app development capabilities, which, of course, as an audiologist, I didn't have. So it's been a great partnership, each contributing, and the end result is obviously something that's award-winning. So we're very, very grateful and proud of the whole thing.
Well, and I learned something interesting. 2 years ago now at NAMM, I did a presentation on hearing protection for musicians with one of your proteges, Laura Sinnott. And she described that same thing, what happens when musicians pull one in-ear monitor out and why they would do it. And an interesting thing I learned from her is that it's often the ear with the in-ear monitor in it that gets damaged more than the ear without the in-ear monitor, for exactly the reason you said. You tend to crank it up when you only have it on one side because you missed the binaural summation. And so you're actually damaging the ear from too loud levels on the in-ear monitor side. I was very surprised by that, but it made perfect sense. Now Evan, Michael had mentioned a little bit about the formation of the company ASI Audio. What exactly is the relationship between ASI and Sensaphonics, and how did it come about?
Well, it came about, Michael had joined forces, as he mentioned, with TAMRD, or Thinkamove, as the letters spell out, because they have a robust engineering capability there. They do, in-ears for firefighters and astronauts and FBI agents and NCAA referees. So there was this ability to make a really tough, durable product that could withstand the rigors of rock and roll touring, let alone any other genre. I mean, we cover everything from orchestras to hip hop to rap to country music. I mean, you name it. And also front of house engineers. So there was that capability. And then you couple that with what Michael had envisioned. And you bring together two forces that not only build something robust and durable, but you bring something that brings a pristine and clean sonic signal into the musician's head. Because one of the things I've learned from Michael in working on this is that, our ears pick up the sound. It's our brain that interprets them. And, most of us think, oh, my hearing. Well, your hearing happens up here. A lot more than it's happening down here, which is evident. So when the two came together, we were, the Michael and another partner were working on it, and I came along about 4 months later, and we needed, a brand. We needed to build a brand platform. So that's what the first 4 or 5 months, 6 months leading up to NAMM 2020 were all about. Is, putting together a team of freelancers from a Rolodex that I have of a lot of freelancers I've worked with over the years. And I was grateful that a lot of them understood that this is a startup. It's not millions and millions of dollars, but it's a really cool toy, and Michael hates when I call it a toy, but sometimes that's that way of saying it's a really cool 3D ME in-ear monitoring system. Yeah, because a lot of musicians go, yeah, I love this toy. But it was a way to, I was grateful that a lot of the really smart people I've learned from and worked under came along and helped us build this brand platform in record time, because we started working on it in, I think, July of 2019, and we launched at NAMM in January of 2020. So it was fast, it was furious, but great teammates on the creative side, great teammates on the engineering side, and Steve Yolstrom, who's worked with Michael for decades, who guided the whole engineering side of it. Everybody just really rolled up their sleeves and jumped in, and there we were, NAMM 2020. And as we all know, COVID hit 2 months later. So we had a brilliant new product. We had a really compelling brand platform. We had a lot of interest, and then the industry shut down. But we were fortunate that some of my relationships and some of Michael's relationships continued to buy the product. And it kept us going through about 18 months of a desert. We were wandering in the desert looking for customers, and we found some, which kept us going. So it's a tribute to the way the company was formed, because we had a product that, again, no one else has this. And we had a product that once people got it in their ears, their eyeballs open up and they're like, how do I get it? And that's the key to any great audio product, let alone this one.
Okay, no, that's a really great background. And you bring up some of the things I would like to dive into in a little more detail. And one of them is what you both said about having microphones so that you get natural directionality while you're wearing the in-ear monitors. And how actually does that work? How's the system built to give you natural 3D directionality while your ears are plugged tightly with an in-ear monitor?
Well, I think I should have probably mentioned this before, but I should preface the fact that the 3D ME platform is built on a product called the 3D Active Ambient, which is a Sensaphonics only product, which added the active mics into the earpieces, and then a belt pack processor that allowed you to turn the mics down. There was no app. There was no ability to enhance with volume and gain. And there was no graphic EQ of those microphones like there is in the current model. But that 3D product was patented back almost, 12 years ago. And this now, the new version has just received its patent, which I'm very excited about, adding on the apps and the Bluetooth connectivity and such. So that's where it all started. It works because you have to have mics that are small. For the crowd that's listening, most of them programming hearing aids or trying to deprogram them for music, getting rid of all the DSP. This is analog.
I've done that.
Right. So it's an analog product, and because of that, we did that on purpose so that you wouldn't have the limitations of signal processing. There is no compression in it. We have a limiter. It's slow, so it'll keep the upper limit values pretty constant, but it's not squashing anything. Nobody complains about it. And the idea is to find a microphone. Unlike hearing aid mics, these mics start at 20 hertz and go to 20,000 hertz, as do the speakers, unlike the hearing aid platform. They also have headroom to go as high as 130 dB plus without clipping, which is a big thing too. With a hearing aid, once it's over 105, who needs it? They're taking it out. But on a stage, the average levels are sometimes 100 to 105, and you're getting peaks, although they might be quick, of over 120, 25 dB. So this has those two features that make it different than a hearing aid.
And I think, that's an important point to make sure everyone understands, is that music is very peaky, right? It has what's called a high crest factor. And when you're thinking about, pure tone averages, you never want to go above X is the way people think of it. But for the best music quality, it's fine and desirable to have short-term peaks that are higher, even if the average isn't that high, without clipping them, right? You're a musician. You need to hear faithfully what it is you and your bandmates are performing. Or if you're an engineer, you need to hear faithfully what you're mixing. So,
yeah, and the analog platform also allows us not to have, there is delays in the digital signal processing added in. So you wouldn't want to hit the drum kit and have it come in real time through your earphone, and then 5 milliseconds later through the microphone, it's going to sound like an echo.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these are designed. The other thing is the acoustic environment is different. Audiologists are used to having to fit somebody with hearing injuries or hearing impairments that are working in an area that's 60 to 55 to 65 dB, right? It's conversational speech, it's restaurants, it's all that. And you need a lot of gain sometimes. This has up to 24 dB gain per octave, but you don't really need that much, because you have to remember that they're working in an environment that it's probably 85 to 100 dB, not 60 dB. And so the amount of gain needed beyond that isn't that much, and which really makes it great. We have people that could not benefit from a hearing aid that we can actually get enough gain and stimulate the hair cells enough to give them enjoyment playing still. So it's really resurrecting some careers. It has also a cross function on it, because you can't believe, having done this for many, many years and seen 50,000 musicians, there's a lot of single-sided deafness in the music industry, and they continue to play. So we have a cross system that actually turns it into a stereo effect for them, and we haven't had one person not like it, unlike hearing aids.
Yeah, no, when I read that the new version had a cross system, that sounds, I remember when with Laura, in preparing the materials for it, I did some of the background, and I was sharing how loud different musical instruments are presented to your ears. And the loudest one, until I thought about it, it never occurred to me, but the loudest one was the piccolo. And piccolo is insanely loud on, that ear, your right ear typically. And after we did the presentation, we actually had a piccolo player come up to us who had severe single-sided hearing loss before they had done anything about it. So a very good real example of somebody.
And really the high register of the flute is also it's almost the same as a piccolo when you get up there. So it's got to do with the frequencies, obviously. And there's some volume behind it too. But
yeah, and the flute was right behind the piccolo.
Yeah, everybody blames the trumpet players. That was me, and percussion players, but really it's the piccolo player that's killing y'all.
Well, and it was not only the frequencies, but it's really close to your ear, and I think the flute was right behind it. The flute's a little longer, so you get a few dB of relief, but not so much anyway. So it makes perfect sense. But you've talked about some of the features. How is that actually implemented in the system? So you've got in-ear monitors with ambient microphones, and you mentioned the belt pack. Describe the features of the belt pack a little bit.
Well, the belt pack really is just the processing device that takes whatever signal's coming in and allows you, by use of your phone, the app is what you use. So there's a smartphone app that works for both iOS and Android, and it allows you to control mic levels for each ear, equalization in 7 bands for each ear separately, compressions for each side. There's memories if you're in 4 different bands and you play in a jobbing band here and a rock band and a country band, you've got multiple unlimited settings to have memorized, so you don't have to reset it every time you go to play. So those are some of the main features on it. Evan, do you have something to add there?
Yeah, I mean, one of the most amazing things that musicians are really loving is that, with traditional IEMs, you're blocked off from your bandmates, the acoustics of the room, the audience, as Michael has talked in audiologist vernacular of, spatial things. And I kind of bring it down to layman's terms, I guess. One of the cool features is that in the options page, instead of having to yank one out and talk to your bandmate between a song and say, hey, let's do this one instead of that one because the crowd is vibing this way or whatever, you can literally, in set mode, in the options section, just tap the top of the body pack and the frequency, your mix completely goes flat and you're talking to each other as if nothing's in your ears. And then as soon as the song starts again, you tap the button on the body pack again, boom, your mix is back. The ambient blending in, if you want, is back. And what I like to say over and over and over, I've been saying it for 4 years now, is that immediacy and intimacy with your bandmates, with the audience, with the acoustics of the room is back. That is lost with all other IEMs. And this little feature, set mode, facilitates that in a way that once a musician, tries it, along with the cross function is quite amazing. It blows people's minds. But once a musician tries that, they realize, holy cow, I can put these things in my ears an hour before I go on stage, 10 minutes before I go on stage, and I can leave them in the whole time. And not only are they incredibly comfortable, but there's a freedom there that you don't get with other IEMs because there's no more, once it's in, it's done. And off you go. And the beauty to me of the whole product is that we're no longer between you and, as I said earlier, your creativity, let alone your fans, your bandmates, or the acoustics. There's no longer a barrier. That is what happens with all other IEMs. The barrier is gone. The freedom is here. The intimacy and immediacy is here, and it's now. And to be completely honest, it's like there's nothing in your ears. How's that?
That's wonderful. And there's a certain sequence of thinking here. I want to run through the sequence that I see the value chain of this device is ultimately, I think you want to wear in-ear monitors for two reasons. One is because you get a more faithful reproduction of the mix, and you can adjust the mix for your own preferences. So you're able to hear what you and the rest of your band members are playing more faithfully. And the second one is you want to use them properly so you get some hearing protection benefit. But you're not going to get the hearing protection benefit if you're taking one out or they're not fit properly, or if you don't get that natural sound of the rest of the band, the stage, the ambient, and all that. If you're not comfortable wearing them because you lose that immediacy, you're going to take them out or not wear them. And therefore, this system addresses both of those, correct? By giving a proper mix, by giving full ambient awareness, right? You're essentially encouraging people to wear them more. And in fact, since they can adjust the mix for their own preference, they may find it, after they get used to them, may find it actually preferable to listening with open ears. Did I state all that correctly?
You did. Well, very well. You stated it very well. The other thing that we kind of slid by here in talking about in-ear monitors, and it is an in-ear monitor. However, it's also a programmable, tunable earplug. And so you don't have to be on an in-ear monitor system and listening that way. We sold 50 to the New York Metropolitan Opera Orchestra, and I've done demos with tons of orchestras with this product, because now you can turn the violin player down next to you. You can correct your hearing loss in your left ear with your own violin, and nobody knows, because one of the problems with, of course, when you get into the symphony world is management is on top of everything. And if you have hearing loss, you are not telling anybody, because your job is probably going to be at risk quickly. So you struggle through it and hope that nobody notices. And when you get to do a demo with these things, and we've done so many of them, Heather Malick and I and Laura Sinnott, we get criers, people that literally start weeping as they're using it because that you brought their hearing back and they're able to play back to the levels that they did before. We've had plenty of musicians that are part of the adult musicians with hearing loss group that are raving about this product and how much it's helped them compared to a traditional hearing aid.
Well, that's really wonderful. I've talked a number of times about the impact of hearing loss and the need to address your hearing loss in the professional work environment, because you can get into this sort of cycle where you're afraid, whether you're afraid of residual effects of ageism or whatever, from displaying your hearing loss, so you don't deal with it. And that actually creates a vicious cycle, because if you don't deal with it, you may miss things, you don't understand things, and that can impede your professional performance and development. Well, you're saying exactly the same thing for musicians. So that if you are
their job's at risk, Andrew. Their position's at risk. So they're really motivated because, they're going to lose what they love to do. They're going to say, yep, you're not first chair anymore. See you later. I know you've been here 40 years, but your hearing isn't cutting it anymore.
And so in this system, you've got, part of it is an equalizer, 7 bands, if I remember right. Now, how actually does somebody, if a musician has hearing loss already, and let's say it's differential between one ear and the other, because, the way it works with music often, how actually do these get fit to accommodate their individual hearing loss? Are they EQing themselves?
Yes.
Are you fitting that in a certain way or giving them some guidance?
Nope. We always say, who's the best sound engineer for you? You. When I used to program hearing aids, I don't do it anymore. And they'd always go, oh, it sounds a little tinny. I can't describe it. I feel like saying, here, take the control and just make it sound the way you like. And it's really not complicated. We're giving them the ability to turn the level up at octave bands. So what they end up doing is sitting and playing with it, and they tune it to exactly what they think it should sound like.
Well, we have something right now. I don't know if you can see it, but there it is. Right there on the app is, that's the left side. And then boom, there's the right side. You can also do it in a joined mode, but this again, back to the whole theme of it's your music, you hear it your way. Here's an EQ, 7 band aside. Have at it, have fun. We're not going to get in the way.
The idea is you're going to perform with these things in your ears, but you're going to forget it. That's what we try. The accomplishment is to say, I got on stage and I forgot I was wearing these things and everything sounded perfect. That's the idea. Not, I had to adjust all these things and this was distorting, so I had to go. No, it's like you concentrate on playing and enjoy what you're hearing without thinking about what's in your ears or on your body.
Okay, got it. Yeah. It's a self-fitting hearing aid.
No, not a hearing aid.
No, I know it's not a hearing aid, but the idea that, and especially you're talking about music professionals, so they understand music, they know their way around an equalizer usually, so that you're saying the best thing, and there's a loudness limiter, so they're not going to get into dangerous places with it, so that ultimately you're saying that the individual musician or engineer, they know best what they need, and therefore we're going to give them full control via the app.
Yeah.
And even if you don't use the app, I had a very famous drummer, I won't mention his name. He's using it. And I said, where do you have the EQ set? He goes, oh, I forgot about the app. So he just turns it on, uses it with the mic set flat, and he thinks it's the greatest thing ever.
Oh, well, that's terrific.
The app.
No, and I'm thinking about the opposite case. If, I'm at some live performance and I see a musician pulling their smartphone out and working it in the middle of the performance, I won't necessarily think they're just bored with this whole thing. They might actually be tweaking their 3D ME system.
We have customers do that. A lot of house of worship folks, praise band leaders or guys and girls in the band, they are on stage with their iPad on a little stand. And it's kind of like their cheat sheet, because if they don't know a hymn or they don't know, all the notes to the song, they can just touch that thing and look down. But the other thing that we found is they're like, yeah, and I can also pop the app up, and if I'm going from my electric guitar to my acoustic for a particular number, I just touch one of the settings. You can save over 50 settings on this thing. That's the beauty of it. I just touch, my acoustic guitar setting, boom, and I don't have to do anything other than touch the screen and put my acoustic on, and off I go. And then when I go back to my electric, or if I go from speaking of piccolos and flute, I played jazz flute in high school. Didn't get any chicks for it. Sorry, I didn't have a saxophone or a trumpet like Michael. But it gives you that ability to just protect yourself, but at the same time, just flow with your creativity.
Okay. And we haven't really talked about the hearing protection part of it much, but presumably that's an integral part of this whole experience. And so I think it's worth having a few words about how you actually fit the in-ear monitor and make sure that you're getting the isolation you need. I think for people who haven't worked in the music setting as hearing care professionals, it might be worth talking about in-ear monitor fitting and how that works, especially for audiologists and other hearing care professionals who might be taking impressions for people, or even, following up with the in-ear monitor or ordering the in-ear monitor for a local musician. How does that actually work, and what are the important things to think about?
I think the most important thing to think about is that you're caring for somebody's hearing, right? As far as the fit, you're talking about how do they know where to program? I'm not sure where the question is.
No, I mean physical fit. In other words, okay, an impression is taken. Yeah.
Well,
in other words,
yeah.
Make sure you're
So the importance on getting an in-ear monitor safe is on two things. One is, how much does it block? So if it doesn't block a lot and you're trying to turn it down, you can't, because everything around you is so loud you can't hear what you're playing, and you're going to turn it up. So that's a major factor, is a tight fit that isolates a lot. And the second thing is to train your brain to turn it down, because the Fetterman study out of Vanderbilt showed that out of the 100 musicians they were comparing floor monitor levels to in-ear monitor levels, 98% of them turned them exactly the same level. In fact, the difference between the two was less than a dB for the entire study. So you have to consciously turn the level down, but you also have to have the isolation. The isolation, we provide a foam comply ear tip in 3 sizes. How do you know if you're getting it? We have something called a seal test on the app that gives you a 50 hertz and 500 hertz alternating tone. If they sound equally loud, it fits good. If they don't, you need a better fit. If you can't get a better fit with the foam, Sensaphonics makes a custom sleeve that you can take the earphone and slide it into. So now you've turned it to completely custom to your ear. Or custom to your ear. And then we can go complete custom with something called the Custom Tour, which is what we do for our other ear monitors, just a full shell, everything encompassed inside of it. And those fit the best of all of the options.
Okay, so you've got 3 options. You can go with a universal fit and foam ear tips. You can pop a custom shell on. You can pop the universal earphone into a custom shell and wear it, or you can do full custom. Is that correct?
Right. And you can test all 3 of them to see if they're sealing correctly or not.
And is that done subjectively?
No. It's subjective in that we present a 50 hertz, which is very low, and a 500 hertz tone, and they should sound equally loud. So if you say, I only hear one tone, it's not sealing at all. If you say, I hear the low tone, but hardly enough, that means it's not sealing enough. And no matter what they do, if they can't get those equal, then they need to go custom.
Yeah, okay, right. But you're subjectively having the music professional judge whether, which I've actually done periodically with my passive hearing protection, is I'll play a low tone and a higher one, and just, okay, yeah, it's the opposite if I'm playing it externally, right? If the low tone is a lot higher, I know that they're leaky.
Yeah.
But that's good, because that's something you can do quickly even before you walk on stage that evening, for example, to make sure everything is still correct.
Correct. And of course, there's the recently released dB check, which we shouldn't get into, but that's the easiest way to tell how loud your ear monitors are. And it's, I don't know if we want to get into that.
Well, yeah, I want to ask you a question or two about dB check because it's kind of fits with the whole experience of, well, what you're trying to do is in all ways possible, protect the hearing of musicians. So we'll get the dB check, but with regard to the 3DME system, you had mentioned that musicians have to get used to listening at a lower level because if they spend half their career listening with wedges at 105 dB, they're probably, according to the study, going to put their in-ear monitors at 105 dB too. How do you actually train or encourage musicians to listen lower and, become adapted to that and therefore have the proper experience at safer listening levels? How is that actually accomplished? How do you tell a musician where to listen?
Without the dB check, it's kind of hard to do it, to be honest with you. I mean, the idea is that you want to have them turn it down, but we have no way. It's like saying, how do you tell somebody not to drive their car too fast? Well, don't drive your car too fast. It's dangerous. How do you know if you're driving too fast? You need a speedometer, and the problem is no in-ear monitors have a speedometer. So you don't know if you're safe or not, and even if we tell them be safe. So what's the number one thing to do? Form a relationship with an audiologist, hopefully a music audiologist, and get your hearing checked every 6 to 12 months. Then you'll know whether you're too loud or not. And that is always, even with a dB check or anything else, the only true measurement is a hearing test to show no change in hearing.
Yeah,
so that's what I recommend to anybody, right?
What you're suggesting is that they get a hearing check every, say, 12 months, and they've got a baseline and then succeed.
More than that, I'm suggesting a relationship with an audiologist, not a screening at one place and a free screening here. I'm talking about somebody that knows how to take care of your ears and watching out for you, like any other professional would do. A professional athlete, would do the same thing. They get checkups all the time by doctors, right? Because they got that body, they got to keep going. Musicians should be checking their hearing all the time. And no matter what you do, wear ear monitors or not, there's no guarantee of protection. Nobody's guaranteeing that. So how do you know if it's working? You got to measure your hearing enough times to know when it's changing. The changes occur slowly because of loud sound. So if you wait 5 or 6 years, you could have dropped another 10 dB at 4K and not even noticed it because it's so gradual and it's still pretty much out of the speech range. You're not saying what a lot. So now suddenly there's this 40 dB 4K notch that's developed over 5 years. But you didn't get back to the audiologist. If you'd gone back in year 2, you would have seen like a 5 dB change, and then we would have watched it. And the next year, it's 10. Weird. Something's wrong here. That's really the procedure to keep everybody's hearing intact. Other than that, you're guessing.
Okay. I think that's,
if I could, there's this myth out there that Michael blew my mind a few years ago, and I was like, really? That's all? And that is because we get this comment all the time when we post videos. We don't post them. We'll have influencers that love the product, everybody from Mitch Malloy to Pete Thorne to Scott, all these folks that post these videos. And there's always comments that are, well, mine has 12 drivers. Mine has 18 drivers. Mine has, 8 drivers. And I finally, a couple of years ago, went to Michael and said, okay, wait a minute. Everybody's doing, I have more drivers. And it's like when we launched the K-Series at QSC, we came out and there was a 1,000-watt speaker, portable PA, pristine sound. Well, everybody knows you can't run 1,000 watts through a tweeter or a woofer. You have to split, which we did, but it was 1,000 watts. But it started this cascade of all other manufacturers. Well, we're 1,200 watts. And then someone said, well, we're 2,000 watts. And we're like, you don't hear the difference. But when it comes to more than 2 or 4 drivers aside, Michael, take it away, please, because we're going to get this comment in the video.
Well, I mean, look, more drivers cause the signals to become more excitable. It allows somebody to drag up a very small chunk of the audio where those speakers are devoted, that area, and pump up the sound and volume. Nobody can grow the bandwidth, right? We have 20 to 20,000. Our system goes 20 to 20,000 with 2 speakers, my old system with 1 speaker. So the bandwidth isn't accomplished with more speakers. It's all there. All you get is amplitude. And the more speakers, the more amplitude or loudness you get. So we've never gone down that road. I'm an audiologist. The company, both ASI and Sensaphonics, are both audiology-based hearing protection and conservation business models that we're not out to see how loud we can make it. On that note, though, we do have a 4-driver product that gives people more headroom when they're in a loud band or have dynamic peaks that really shoot up, and it helps them. But we're like the Shure Corporation. They too only go up to 4 speakers. We don't believe more is better. But that's debatable. Obviously, people like it, that hyped up sound. We get others that just want to hear naturally on stage.
Yeah. Yeah, people ask me that all the time, and I just tell them, look, it's louder. And is louder necessarily good for your hearing? Probably not. Not over time.
Yeah, well, you get into a debate that kind of would rage all over high-end audio, right?
It does. Unfortunately, we don't have to jump in anymore. Our end users jump in and do the debate for us, which is the beauty of this product. They're like, well, wait a minute, you need to experience this and save yourself. Look, we're $800. Some of these things, are $1,400, $1,600, and you're just paying for a louder instrument, really.
Yeah. So I think ultimately the key here is that, your customers like what you're doing and are satisfied with the experience, and all that really matters. And I want to go into, like you had mentioned at DB Check, in conjunction with how do you train a musician or engineer to listen at appropriate levels, and you said you can't unless you have a speedometer. So DB Check is that speedometer. Tell me a little bit about DB Check and how it works in conjunction with the 3DME system, or how you would use it.
I want to preface that too, Andrew, with the fact that since I started making in-ear monitors in '92, I've always had a way to measure volume. The other way to do it is with an in situ probe tube and a microphone that's really small. However, you have to have a sound level meter. So actually, we had Automotive designed a system, the ER7C. It had an inverse response of a canal resonance, because remember, all the safety measurements are taken with a mic outside your ear. So when you place the mic down in the ear, suddenly you're contaminated by the resonance of an ear canal. So we would do an inverse of the average resonance based on about 40 different resonances, and it would give you a dBA reading. But I'd have to be on stage, put the tube in their ear, put the in-ear monitor in, stand there and take a measurement, record it. And, it worked fine. The problem is it was time consuming, and bands have things, a late load in because of weather or whatever. And then there's not much time to do the sound check. So they don't have time for you, or the singer is in a fight with his girlfriend and doesn't want to do it, or whatever it is. There's always some reason where a lot of times I'd show up at the show and they couldn't do it. So I thought, we need to have something that's easy, doesn't require me to be there, and allows people to see. So DB Check measures, it's a patented device, or a third patent, and it measures the drive voltage of whatever you're plugged into, and knowing the published specs of the earphone, our patent takes that and turns it into a dBA output, and we offer it in an OSHA and NIOSH allowable time, not dose, because I did 100% dose. First time I told this band they got 100%, they all hide 5. I go, that's bad, not good. So I thought percent doesn't, and how did they turn? If I say you're at 105, you have to go down 5%. Where is that, right? But if I tell them you have 26 minutes at this level before you risk injury, they know what to do. And then they can turn it down and look right at DB Check, and they'll say, oh, now you've gone up to like an hour and a half, and that's the length of your show, and you're probably good, but you better go check your hearing.
And so what actually physically is the DB check system then? How does it interface with the in-ear monitors?
It's got a little plug-in on the top that you plug a jumper cable from your sound source into it, and you plug your earphones into it. So
okay,
it's just to go between. It's passive. If it died, you still get your monitor signal. It also can work on a spare belt pack. So the big engineers for, Dave Matthews can take his spare pack, turn it up to where he uses it, and plug the device in and forget about it. When the show is over, they hit stop and they'll say, this is the average, including quiet times between songs and all that, and how loud you were and what the time recommendation was compared to the time of the show. So it's just information. It's a speedometer. It doesn't make you do anything. It just gives you the information to say, oh, I didn't realize that was that loud, right? A lot of them don't.
Okay, and this is typically something you would do during sound check time. You wouldn't necessarily wear it live during the performance.
I wouldn't wear it during the show, but once you get during sound check, at least you get an idea, and the brain starts changing. You start listening at lower levels, and it happened to a famous drummer where he drank the Kool-Aid and he dropped his levels a lot. And I went to a show and his ear monitors broke. It was the last song of the entire tour. And they went out with his spares and he goes, forget it, I'm going to play without him. And there wasn't any floor speakers around him. And when he finished, he looked at me, he goes, I can't believe how loud it was. And his drum tech said, you were about 10 times louder than that. But before you started, so he didn't even have any of the speakers. So your brain adjusts. And now lower levels become normal and anything louder becomes, I don't like it. It really does work, but it takes time and effort and somebody on the audiology side to convince him it's worth the effort.
Well, and that brings up an interesting question for any audiologist who wants to be able to work with musicians or better work with musicians. How do they actually get the skill set to work with music specifically?
Some, because they're musicians, feel like they have an edge, and I think that's a small edge that people have. I run a course I have for many years, since 92, called Gold Circle, and it was really just to educate audiologists interested in the music industry. I was fortunate enough to get educated by Don Pearson, who is the head of ultrasound in the Grateful Dead, one of the brilliant guys, because he realized that I didn't understand how stages were set up and sound reinforcement, and that helped me. So now I have a virtual class called Gold Circle. It's available through our website, and audiologists can take it, and it's about 4.5 hours of work on this is what you do with a musician. The American Academy of Audiology came up with a best practices guideline that I chaired along with 8 other people involved that are music audiologists or engineers or educators, and we came up with a consensus document on what to do. The course is not what to do so much as how to do it and what are the nuances working with different genres, orchestra compared to rock band or whatever the case. So it's a full course that people can take if they're interested. Or they can be like me and just do it for 30 years and make a bunch of mistakes, figure it out, and try to teach other people.
Well, the beauty of having people like you is that, you don't necessarily have to learn it by doing like you did, right? And now there are good resources so people can work with their musicians. Because I saw it in the in-ear monitor days, there were a lot of small houses, ear molders and so on, who were selling in-ear monitors just for the local bands. And so there's a broad need to understand exactly, how to best take care of the musicians.
Part of it, Andrew, I had a famous musician, R&B guy, again, HIPAA stuff. I came in here, he was sold out 3 nights at City Winery, and he's a crooner. So it's a lot of women that swoon when he's singing, and he's here to get his stuff. This is his 4th set of ear monitors. He's had 3 of different brands, saw an audiologist for impressions, and I went to take his hearing test, and I said, how's your hearing? He goes, oh, you won't believe how good it is. And I said, what'd the audiologist tell you? And he said, well, they never did me. You had 3 ear impressions for in-ear monitors and never got a hearing test? No, they didn't offer. Oh, but you won't believe. So I test his right ear, and sure enough, it's beautiful, flat 15, 20, beautiful. And he's in his late 40s. Test his other ear, he's got a 60 dB notch. And I say, are you taking that ear out? He goes, yeah, why? And I show him, and he starts crying because he's always spent my whole life trying to protect my hearing. Nobody told me I wasn't supposed to do that. Now, do I expect a typical audiologist to know that? No. But I expect them to take a hearing test, even if they don't know, and give it to the guy. When he got his second set, they would have noticed a change at 4K. And his third set, they would have noticed a bigger change that said, something's going on with your left ear. And he would have go, that's the one I take out. Maybe I shouldn't do that. So this is how simple it is to even stay on top of people without knowing what you're doing. But if you're just going to shove putty in somebody's head, yeah, I think you have some ethical problems and possibly some liability. I think there's liability in that. Personally, if so, he could have gone back and sued them all for not doing what they're supposed to do.
Okay. And so that's part of the coursework, both your own and also what you've done with the AAA, is to help educate audiologists on
There's
the
a best
music
way to do it
environment.
if you want to work with them, right? You don't have to. It's like anything else, but that's what we're trying to do, is raise the bar.
Okay. Well, look, I mean, I want to congratulate you again on winning the Innovation Award. I really appreciate you both coming on and describing the 3DME system. Evan, as we wrap it up, do you have any last thoughts?
No, I think you've covered it all. I just hope that musicians out there will begin to understand at a younger age, when they're in school, if you want a long, healthy career, you don't have to use an ASI or a Sensaphonics product, but do something. As Michael said, go see an audiologist once a year. You go to your doctor once a year to get your insides checked. You go to the dentist hopefully once a year to get your teeth checked. Well, if you're a musician and you're serious about it, whether it's casual church or you really want to tour and go there, this is everything right here. Yes, your voice is important. Yes, your hands are important, but none of that matters if you don't protect this, because you're never going to know. So does ASI offer a solution? You bet. Does Sensaphonics offer a solution with simple -15, -10 earplugs? You bet. And there are other companies out there too. We don't mean to diss other companies by any means. But this company is the only company that founded, and all the products are designed by a musician's audiologist. And if you just want to come to us for knowledge, let alone a purchase, please do. Thank you.
No, thank you for that. And I'll add that if you go visit Sensaphonics when the wind is right, you're going to come away from there hungrier than you started because of the smells that issue from the Blummer chocolate factory nearby.
Yeah.
That's the coffee place together. It's really something. One thing I'd like, which I didn't say, and Evan and I have forgotten to say, I also want to deeply thank the Hearing Health Matters Group organization for the award. We're very, very, very grateful and excited. I mean, we're a very small company, audiology-owned company, and I saw some of the other people that were up for awards last year, and they're quite big, or much bigger than us, and more well-known. So for us to find a Innovator of the Year award and be chosen amongst these giants who have all great technology and probably all worthy of winning, we're just very grateful about it. So thank them. Thank the voters.
It's a thrill to see you have won because you're really addressing a need in a unique area. And so, yes, congratulations on winning the Innovator of the Year award. One last thing, and that is, Evan, if anybody wants to reach out to you, how do they get you?
They can reach out to Evan Mackenzie at ASI Audio. They can reach out to info, I-N-F-O, at asiaudio.com. Comes into my colleague Charlene Clements, and it always gets sent over to me. So either way is fine.
Okay, thanks. And how about you, Michael?
Michael at sensaphonics.com. Come to the Sensaphonics website and learn a few things, maybe. See what's going on.
Okay. Well, thanks to you both. I appreciate you joining me today. Congratulations once more on the win. And thanks to everybody for watching or listening to this edition of This Week in Hearing.